Yes. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Awesome. Great. Okay. Hi, guys. I'm Koulsaya Mohan. I am a proud daughter, a sister, an artist, an avid traveler, and a very nice friend, I can say. But I'm also a avid hiker. I'm very grateful to announce I'm also a good artist and also a traveler. With the opportunities that presents today in the current world, I'm very grateful that I've been able to achieve all of this despite my birth identity. I'm a 26-year-old female UX designer contributing to energy sector for past 4 years. And I'm also so thrilled to be speaking about an issue that's very important to me. So before we move on with the presentation, I want to start by showing gratitude. I want to say thank you to all the women who played the part in shaping the woman that I am today. And I'm very happy Women's Day to all of you. Okay, let's start with a really quick thought experiment. Let's figure out if we are gender inclusive. So imagine a CEO. Take a moment to imagine a CEO in your head. So now imagine a feminist. Let's go ahead and imagine someone leaving work early to pick up their kid. Let's evaluate our imagination, right? Was the CEO that we imagined in our head, is he a man or a woman? The feminist that we imagined in our head, is it a woman? And the one that we imagined leaving work early, was it a man or a woman? I think today's answer would be little less biased just because today's Women's Day, it's a little more special. But what does this answer reveal about ourselves? Let's give a quick thought about it. And gender bias. Gender bias, how can we tackle this and overcome this using design thinking is what we're going to see today. We as designers, organizations, and as individuals have come a long way in tackling these issues, right? In preventing the intentional gender bias against women. But how can we neutralize the implicit bias, the unconscious bias that's there? So, what is this unconscious bias, right? We all have unconscious biases. Our brain takes in more information than it can process. So, we rely on these mental shortcuts to simplify the world around us. So, we rely on these stereotypes. So, that in turn affects the kind of decisions that we make towards others and in general in our life itself. So this presentation in itself, it's an inspiration, it's a germination of the author Carolyn Perez. She produced this amazing book called Invisible Woman. So how many of you have read Invisible Woman? Okay, so I'm going to post the link to the book on the chat. And please, I think when I was reading the book, I wanted to have a warm tea next to me because it's absolutely rage-inducing. It shows how women are neglected and how women are just easily and comfortably forgotten. Okay, and I wanted to show us how it's affecting us, that we do not come across, that we do not actively think about, but it's there in our everyday life, right? So, how many of you have seen these absurdly long queues waiting in the women's washroom than the men's washroom? It's because women take more time in the toilet because of their apparel, or they have to assist assist their kid or an elderly, or it could be changing their pads or tampons. But all the washrooms have exactly the same amount of toilets to be used. The car design and safety tests are designed with a male default mindset. So the car crash dummies is built with a male standard, meaning that is in the car crash, women are almost 50% more likely to seriously injure than men. Also with the CPR dummies, we're always male bodied. The dummies do not come with breasts unless and until recently there was a newly released dummy which has breasts, but not most countries have access to them. And another pitfall of gender data gap is NASA's first all-female spacewalk was cancelled in 2019 because they just didn't have enough spacesuits to fit in the proper size for women astronauts. All these examples that mentioned, right? These are very unintentional, right? The products, the space, and the systems are designed to help these people to make lives easier. But without consideration of the difference between male and the female, we are doing the male default, leaving out more than 50% of the population. As designer myself, I was very much guilty and for being ignorant. All these were very. I could not I could not recognize these until the book pointed out. This gender blind design is so obvious. And yet, all that I have been doing is following this design trend, which is already gender biased. But even though realizing we are unconsciously biased is a first step in the right direction, we should be aware to not use it as an excuse. It would be so easy for me to say that because it's precisely because it's unconscious, right? According to World Forum, it takes 132 years to achieve gender equity. That's a lot of time. Bias is inevitable and therefore not a fault. We cannot fall into this fallacy. I'll come to this in towards the end. So now that we saw all these problems, how are we gonna go ahead and solve them on design thinking using design thinking? The problem of this scale at large. How can we, as designers, as design practitioners and advisors, can use design thinking, the tool that we have at our hand, and how can we make our workplace better? So, for people who don't know what design thinking is a human-centered approach that can help organization reduce implicit biases that affect the recruitment, retention, or even advancement of women using a very collaborative and creative problem-solving approach. So, in the 2015 Global Survey on the state of innovation showed that design served as a drive-in concept for almost all top innovative companies, and a trend that only elevated in the prominence since. To counteract the implicit gender bias that may have been holding women back in organization, can apply these 5 stages of design thinking to engage employees, iteratively redesign the facets of work environment and their work policies and the business decision processes. Let's apply this 5 stages of design thinking as a tool in concept of implicit bias, right? So we know that we want to start exploring the problem, and we identify the problem areas that we want to sort out. And then from there, we go ideate and test and evaluate. So how do we apply this so that the implicit biases have reduced, or we can uncover the benefits of lack of implicit bias, right? So on explore, let's explore by using the methods such as interviews, focus groups, the observations, data analytics to collect and analyze the data with the aim of unearthing new insights about women employees and their experience and possible biases that might affect their journey. And this way of exploring, because we are actively involving the women in the process, women as in here are users, we're able to unearth these implicit biases by through their experiences, not because you read it out of an article or these preconceptions that you have of what implicit bias that women face are. And once you explore those, right, once you start acting and start incorporating these uses as women in the process, we'll be mind blown of what kind of results that we're going to get. And after explore, now that you have immense amount of data, now we want to know what to tackle. So let's work alongside a diverse group of key users to draw on exploratory research and identify organizational and situational drivers for this gender bias. This method employs collaborative and creative techniques to understand the unique challenges that women may experience in recruitment. Even in retention and advancement, due to implicit bias, identifying the key drivers and desired outcomes in the areas becomes very much easy. Moving on to ideate, let's collaborate with these key users. Here are women and other inclusive perspectives. Let's bring in the women, let's bring in the men who see how they see women employees and co-workers to brainstorm the range of possible solution for minimizing or even contradicting the identified challenges. It could be potentially, biased policies or programs or even decision processes, like I said. A set of solution can also be taken ahead to test and prototype. So when it comes to testing, the solution will be prototyped and tested through pilot programs, which includes employee feedback and participation as mandatory. These pilots will actually demonstrate how the solution works and might not work to mitigate these biases in real life situation, because that's what we're looking at. We don't want to put it in a stimulated environment. We want to see how it's going to behave in a real life situation, right? And lastly, evaluate. We can collect all these feedbacks from the employees to assess if and how the best solutions are both mitigating biases and enabling other benefits. Deriving from these decreased implicit biases in the workplace solution can be iteratively improved and rejected based on these feedbacks. Though this design thinking, all this five stages, the tool and the framework is not developed for something like implicit biases or latent gender. Design thinking contains several characteristics that can render it well suited for untangling these complex problems of this nature. So moving towards a debiased workplace. I'll tell you why applying these five stages of design thinking does actually matter. It creates and customize it. It customize and therefore very effective solutions can be achieved through this. And employees' perspective can become very imperative in understanding if the implicit bias is actually occurring between the employees. What more is better than actually gaining their experience, gaining the information through their experience? Without developing rich insight into experiences of women employees, an organization risk misidentifying or actually misinterpreting problems or investing solutions. Through emphasis on exploratory and open-minded information gathering, design thinking bases both its understanding of the problem and the development of the potential solution directly from the women employees rather than preconceptions, like I told you. It creates customized and therefore more effective solutions tailored to each and every program they come up with in organization. Women are not a monolithic group, and implicit gender bias does not take one single shape across the organization, right? So what happens with design thinking method is it allows you to have this adaptability by increasing organization to put the women employees at the center of the process and tailoring the solution to an organization to a specific resource and with their capabilities and the work environment. So every other organization can have their own goals and aspirations, and and could be their own policies, but understanding from each and every organization with the different work environment and the work culture, we can actually gain some useful insight and move ahead with the information that we have. Okay, now that we do the heavy lifting with the big organizations doing big things, I was also thinking that I'll take today a little time off to address these very small little steps that we can take. Interrupting gender bias to meeting culture. Yeah, so this is something that's out of my experience and also the experience that we share as working force. Yes, I believe the unconscious bias is an unfinished business of our time. We need to get to it. We are the workforce of the future. We need to constantly reaffirm and shape the work environment we want. We cannot sit back and just let things do on its own and let things be. Ask women to speak first. Research shows that if a women speak first, other women are more likely to speak up. Give visibility and credit to the originator of the idea. Sometimes in the meeting, the originator of the idea, if it's a woman, it just easily gets lost. So if you are confident enough than the other women, speak up. You have the power. Give them the visibility and the recognition, right? appreciate, recognize, and shout out to the fellow women. Help them to be seen and to be heard in your capacity. Trust me, it works wonders and to improve in finding people's voice when they really can't on their own. There is also something called space 2 model. This is something that I came across. This is not just for gender bias, this is for mindful inclusion altogether. Let's slow down and be mindful and consider in the response to the others. How are we responding to others? What are the choice of words that we're using? And perspective and talking. Actively imagining the thoughts and the feelings of the others, empathize, challenge assumptions, actively self question and challenge your own assumptions. Is it right of you? Is this assumption right? Make culturally appropriate attributions and identify cultural stereotype exemplars. Actively nurturing diverse network and forming friendships with people from background different to your own. And I'm glad we are all of this at our disposal that we can use. And it is time to design women in. The forgotten womankind. It is time. It is our responsibility, individual responsibility of designers, especially UX designers who holds the power to do this. So thank you so much for your time today. I'd love to start the discussion on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And in order to facilitate the participation, I would suggest to raise your hands and yeah, maybe open into the floor. So I saw maybe Fernanda, if you want to jump in, please.
Oh, hello. Are you hearing?
Yes. Hi, Fernanda.
Hi. I would like to congratulate you. It was amazing. Actually,
Oh,
I was just clapping, but anyways, congratulations.
thank you, Fernanda. Thank you so much.
All right.
I
We
also want
saw.
to take a
Yeah.
little time. Yeah, thank you, Louis. I also want to take a little time and talk about how we think this unconscious is inevitable. We cannot address these, but aren't we talking about it enough? It's not unconscious anymore, right? At what point are these biases really unconscious? Ample amount of evidence is out there that shows that this has been there ever since, and nowadays we all are hearing about them and talking about them actively. So I don't think it's unconscious anymore. It's conscious. Let's actively work on that. Yeah. Um, I see Helen is here. So we were talking about this right before the presentation of this when I presented in the Innovation Day. We did talk about how we share similar data gaps that we found in our own work culture and article. She's a journalist, and she talked about the article that she found how women force are involved much later in the war, in the Ukraine war, and how they could see they were able to perform much better than men. So that was an interesting find that Helen was showing me. Just because we think that this is the norm that women has to abide by, we don't know what all we can uncover with these potential, right? Yeah.
Now I really raised my hand. I think as women, we can change it by doing it, by
Right.
getting inside the design and making the change, because it's very comfortable for men to stay as we are, right? And I think we should be the protagonists of this change.
Yes. When I was talking to my friend, she said the same thing. We need to change the narrative. It's not the same anymore. And it was such a personal and an emotional day for me today because a lot of my women friends called me and we called each other, we wished each other, we showed how important being there for each other meant. showing what I can do inspired her. Showing what she can do inspired me. We were inspiring each other, and in their own way, be it our mom, be it our housework, or be it a stranger that I met, everybody proves to be so much, that shows me so much out there that inspires us. Yeah.
Yes. Something that I try to do is to tell my husband about things we go through so he can see in my perspective and not in a man's perspective. So he becomes my ally and he spreads to his friends how to not be that person, not be that man who fuels this inequality in our society, you know. So I always show him what me and my friends go through in workspace, in life in general, so he can see uh, in help me and be an ally in our cause, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is something that I do personally. I am from southern part of India, so not a lot of people are aware that even women from South India are out there and doing wonders, right? So every time if I meet someone, I make sure I full on represent South Indian women. So I tell them that I'm actually from South India. I am from this particular part of India, and what all the achievements that I've done. I make sure I advocate all of this so that they know that women are coming up. Women, especially people from the marginalized communities, and people who think that are not doing well. I want them to know, no, we are here. We're already here. We're doing good. Yeah. And I like to see their face when I say this. It lights up. Oh, I didn't know girls from South India are doing so well, and who are very bold in doing things like these. Traveling across countries and going out for studies, and it's like we are. You know.
I have a thought, just given that it's International Women's Day today, but it's so interesting. We touched upon how, like, when women bring and inspire each other, what we can do in our community. I feel like for the longest time, at least for me, I feel like media and the way society wants us to interact with each other is competition. And I've always sort of felt disconnected from other women because there's this like negative association with connecting with women. And maybe this is my just experience, but as I've grown older and met inspiring women and been a part of communities like this, where I can see women who are like leading the way, like it's amazing what we can do together when we're brought together and bring our strengths in. And I think like, maybe I'm being a conspiracy theory here, but I feel like we're constantly pulled apart so that we aren't stronger together, if that makes sense. So like if we can somehow break through in these industries, like the book that you shared, Invisible Women, is so good. Like I was enraged reading this book because of some of the things in there that seem so like obvious, but are completely overlooked. Like one example, which like is going to be familiar to you, was when there was like a natural disaster in India, and there's these houses that were leveled. There was a committee to try and rebuild these houses, and all of these houses, thousands of houses, were made without kitchens because women do the cooking, and there was no women on the committee to making these houses, so that all the houses were not made with kitchens. And I was just like, how can you not have the awareness? Like, what is happening here? Anyway, I'm digressing, but I highly recommend the book if you guys have not read it. But one other thing I wanted to mention, some of the things that I worry about, like, yes, we need to be the ones to help start these conversations or break the norms. It's just, for example, in the book, it talks about like the transit industry, or like public transportation. how are we going to get in there? How are we going to make waves if we're not even brought to the table to begin with? Like, how can we make sure that public transit is safer for women? And there's very obvious like suggestions in this book, but how do we make it, how do we make it so aware that men see the value in implementing these things if we're not even there to have these conversations? Anyway, this isn't really it's a rhetorical question, but it's just that makes me think, like, you know, we can talk about it, and yes, like we can like try and say we do it, but like, how do we actually implement it if we're not actually in the room with them?
That is true. I think the first step is to get there, to actually do meaningful work and get there where it actually makes difference, right? Yeah, even at Enbridge right now, we are building the database for energy demand project that we are doing. We are including more women because Louis and the other designer are the only men in the group, so we are dominatingly women. So we make sure we bring we add women in the process of personas and stakeholders. Yeah. And about the book, yeah, I've asked so many men of my male friends, would you take it? Would you pick the book from the shelf if you see it? All of them shamelessly no. So what I'm doing is I got a bundle of the books at home. I'm gifting them. So I'll mail them everybody. So they make sure they read it, or I don't know if they don't want to buy it themselves. If nothing is nudging them, I'm happy to give you the books. Just read them. Yeah.
I love that. That's a great idea.
Yeah. Start gifting them. Yeah. Strategizing. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to say I'm from Berlin, so I guess I'm the only one who has the day off today because this is a public holiday. So this is the best present on this day. I don't have to work. And for like or even men, they also don't have to work, but like the reason is is that. And for me, it's sometimes very hard to like find a balance between pointing out that even in a very civilized society where we have the same rights and blah blah blah, you don't want to point out every day that you are molested on public transport, that like people are catcalling you, blah blah blah. You don't want to be the victim every day, and at the same time you have to point it out so that men realize how you are treated when you are alone. So like for me personally, that's really like, I talked to my friends about it, and it was a particularly bad night where I went to my friend's place, and it was public transport, like the U-Bahn, and a guy came to me and he started like nestling on my leg, like it was like he physically came to me. And it was the first time that I pointed it out to my friend because he came so close to me, that weirdo on the metro. And he was like, oh yeah, wow, that happens. And I was like, yeah, every fucking week. But I don't want to talk about it every week because I don't want to be in that mood every week. So I find it's a very, it can be really, really tough to find a balance between like recognizing the problem and like speaking up, and at the same time not being the victim.
I'm sorry that you experienced that. That's awful. And I totally understand what you're saying. It's like, you don't want to be constantly badgering with these like almost bad news or whatever, and like be that person. It's like, oh my gosh, well, is it really that big of a deal? Like every single time. I almost wonder if there's a way that like we can, I don't know, communicate this, that this should be taken more seriously. Like, is there, and this is just my my advertising brain kind of working, but like, what can we do to make it very easy for women to like identify, okay, like it's happened again, and then we tally it up so that people can actually see in real time how often this thing happens. Like, I mean, I know there's all sorts of statistics and everything that show how often women get sexually harassed or whatever, but sometimes it just feels like a number, like it doesn't have a strong enough impact people can just like glaze over when it's like, okay, well, it's just a random number. But when you start like associating it with people that they know, you know, maybe it feels a little more real. But yeah, I wonder if there's ways in like public transport to like, you know, make it like a tally or something. Anyway, I don't know. I'm just kind of talking out loud. That's unfortunate. I'm sorry that you experienced that.
Yeah. Olivia, I think we can get to somewhere. I think the conversation that we are having right now, we are actually women from different parts of the world complaining about how our lives have been difficult. Imagine putting it into a problem space, right? Imagine coming together as a community and putting it as a problem space and actively working on a call differently. I don't even know you. You're from a different part of the world, working on different time zone with your own experiences. But this getting all of us together and actually solutioning it. This is something to think about as a community, as UX community. Yeah. If not us, then who else? You know, if not the UXers, then who else?
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Anusha. So first of all, Kaushalya, great presentation, and I'd love hearing everyone's input on it. So thank you everyone for sharing. I do have a couple of points with the bad experiences that we keep having, which are so often just considered as numbers, like Olivia said. It's really sad, but then I don't know, like we echo something which is, you know, so sad. Like if you go through such experiences on a regular day commute, it's not something that everyone would be happy about. But then when you see the numbers, there's so many of it, and you know, it's sad that it's reduced to just numbers, and we're not actually seeing it as a big problem or even as a problem to start with. It's just another number, which gets a little heightened during March and, you know, Women's Day, and then eventually it gets a little toned down and everyone seems to be, you know, okay with the numbers. And that's like, I guess, the sad part of, you know, where the situation is. I'm hopeful. I don't want to lose hope that things will get better. And it's us. We are the community. We come together and, you know, we bring out those little changes. But then, yeah, so, you know, we're starting somewhere. Yeah, we're starting from here. Yep.
And there are women actively working on solutions like these, safety solutions, women's safety solutions, right? When talking about these harassments, when I was trying to find a solution, the book actually enraged me. I used this opportunity, I used this presentation as an opportunity to see, have we become better since the book, or ever since everything happened, right? So coming to self-defense is something that everybody is suggesting on different articles, different experts, and different women suggesting self-defense and um, how to strategically avoid men like that. Self-defense, I don't know the right word for it, but yeah, strategically how to avoid men like this. If you the ability to recognize if the man is a perpetrator or not, and how do you quickly avoid them? Just raising your eyebrow, showing them you're assertive, and telling them, okay, no, I hold my ground. You cannot touch me, or you cannot come near me because this might go end badly for you. You know, quickly assess the surroundings around you and get to the place. Yeah, I know all of these are not the ideal way we want to be part of, but yeah, something that we can do, right? A lot of women, a lot of girls, they don't even know that these kind of things exist, these kind of solutions exist. So there are also women groups working towards active self-defense classes, and also these strategically avoiding men classes, yeah, teaching them how to do it. Yeah. But yeah, but long way to go. Yeah, especially with the
Yeah.
harassment, I think it's a end of wall. But yeah, long way to go.
I live in Brazil, in Rio, and it's a dangerous place, a generally dangerous place. But as a female, I feel like I'm 100 times more in danger in public spaces than my husband, for example. When I took the bus, I used my key as a weapon because I was very afraid that a man would show up and grab me. So I walked home with my key in my hand, firmly in my hand, to use as a weapon if needed, to, I don't know, blind a man if needed, you know, because I was really scared. And for some time, a car started to follow me, and I had to took a different way to get home because of it. And I was really scared, and I don't see any man with that kind of preoccupation in their minds. It's just us. It's really sad. I think even self-defense classes are kind of sad because we have to be extra prepared to live, to walk on the street, to take a public transportation. But it's a necessity, is a reality that we live right now, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Fernanda. I just want to share with that. Thank you again, Koulsaya. Is that how I'm pronouncing it correctly?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for your presentation and everyone for this really insightful and like important conversation that we're all having. I just wanted to add that it's so true. Like I'm reflecting now, and I remember when I was first going to university, me and my friends like were comparing like what we got as like a, you know, going to college gift. And me and my male friends, like I was asking them, they're like, yeah, I got a laptop, I got a camera, and then I was like, oh, I got mace, pepper spray. Like, you know, and I was like, did anyone else get that? Like, and they were like, no, they don't need it, right? And yeah, so I just also wanted to add that there's this really beautiful documentary that I watched before on Netflix. Sorry, that's my dog in the background. But it's called The City of Joy, if anyone has heard of it.
I've heard of it, but I don't think I watched it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such an empowering, like beautiful documentary about so sorry about that. So you know, in certain places, especially like war-torn Africa, with the how women and children become weapons of war, basically. Like the male soldiers would come in and, you know, rape the women and children, and then from there, how that would be viewed in the family is like, oh, another man touched my family, and so they have to release them into the world. Like basically it's not an honorable relationship anymore. And so these women are just left like on the streets or homeless, but I'm so sorry. Yeah, see, my dog is also feeling really passionate about this. Yeah, it's really, really powerful because there's this institution that was created where these women were taken in, and it was like an empowerment program to then release them out into the world and do activist work, and, you know, also to transform the way women feel about themselves and are viewed in this society. And yeah, I'll definitely share the documentary. And also recently I came across, okay, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna have to do something about that.
Oh, just to add on to what Pauline said, it's interesting the perspective just even between my brother and I, and like how we've been treated growing up, where like my mom is from the Philippines originally, and she moved to Canada. So my brother and I were born in Canada, but she's always has this sort of mentality that like, oh, Olivia, like you can't, like you got to be careful, like you're gonna get raped if you do this, you're gonna, like, it's always about me having to double check this or be aware of my surroundings or whatever it is. Whereas my brother, oh, he can stay out late, like no questions where he's going, whatever. It's always been that way. And like because of what she shared with me, like I have been fully aware of my surroundings and like I am safe, but it's like one of those things that why does it have to be on us to to be careful, you know, like, why do we need to? I know it's what we have to, and it's again, another rhetorical question, but it's just so sad that this is the reality. But anyway, now that Pauline is back, I'll hand it over.
No, yeah, thank you for sharing that, Olivia, because it's so true. Like, but the fact that there are change, like as you said, like there are changes being made, and this unconscious is coming more into light and becoming conscious for a lot of us. There are seeds of change being planted and blooming throughout. And yeah, so I just really wanted to share that documentary. And then also another book that I really love is called The Heroine's Journey, as opposed to Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. I don't know if y'all are familiar with it, but like I really loved English growing up. And so that was one of the books in my basically creative writing class, that they're like, oh, all great stories are modeled after the hero's journey, you know, like Homer, that whole formula of like the hero going out and then like leaving their home, leaving what they know, and then fighting and then meeting people along the way. But then it's all centered around a man's story, right? So it's like, where is the women's story in this? And so this author, Maureen Murdoch, she basically, yeah, reclaims the hero's journey and put the heroine's journey as a narrative, because I feel like myths are so key for how we, you know, view and see the world. And with women, or, you know, the feminine not being revered as this, you know, heroine, or this hero, or someone that can achieve and accomplish great things in our stories, in society. I think really like unconsciously has defined that as well for us in our psyches, like, and so that's another book that I really like. And then lastly, I'm so sorry, this is like really long of me, but I recently came across this this tool by Harvard called Project Implicit. And yeah, so that was awesome. It's a way to see like what unconscious biases we do have. Because yeah, I found myself, you know, sometimes it would be like, it'd show you woman, and then like you have to press certain things on the keyboard, like women or men, and then it would show you like, you know, household, or it would show you like CEO, like as you were saying, and then you have to like just quickly, as fast as you can, what do you associate this with? And yeah, it was really kind of confronting, but like it just puts it polite, right?
Yeah, eye-opening as well.
Yeah, eye-opening, exactly. So yeah, I'll share.
And I also wanted to say this. I recently did a Europe trip, short Europe trip. The kind of strangers that I've met, especially women, all of them were so inspiring. And we also discussed how unfair it is that I would explore much more if I was a man. It is so saddening, but it's so unfair, you know. I'd be boldly taking late night trains or late night buses and explore much more and be more freer than I am now, you know. Yeah, I remember talking to Helen about it.
Yeah, actually, it never held me back, and that's also what I mentioned to my friends. It's like, I don't want to identify myself as somebody that is like constantly threatened. And I think if I do, it makes me a lot weaker. And at the same time, like the society I was raised in, or like the way that my parents raised me, we have way less like this security thinking. It's not how we treat our girls. Like, it's not in our culture, and especially not in Berlin culture. So like a large part of me and of how I'm behaving as a woman is that you have to be strong, you have to speak up, and then you can do everything. And I think a lot of women don't have that mindset. And it makes it really, 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 really hard for them to move on and to not like to overcome the hardships, or like when it's harder for us compared to men. Like yeah, I mean, it's good for me. but at the same time, it makes it really, really hard to see other women from my perspective, where you're like, oh, where do you come from? How did you go to kindergarten? How were you raised? Like, I don't really get it, because I don't have the feeling that it ever had me back, like, to be a woman.
I met Murray in Istanbul. She helped me with travel, and we ended up spending a couple of days together and exploring. And she's from also Germany, and we shared this different perspectives. We're both all of same age. We shared this amazing different perspective of travel. And she asked me, she was in wonder. She asked me, how can you do it? You don't have broad shoulders to scare of men. So how are you traveling alone? How could you do it? Yeah. I'm glad how the chat is just, firing up with all the documentaries and books and references. I'm loving this. Yeah. Yeah, like you said, I think I wish there were more men on the call to listen to us speak, hear is firsthand of what we are going through, and also part of the solution that we are discussing as well. Yeah. Right. Oh, also Netflix also has Women's Day special for the whole month. So that's great. I've been going at it. Yeah, that's great. I recently watched Jessica Watson's story. She's the youngest Australian, youngest ever girl, 16-year-old, to sail around the world, circumnavigate herself and sail around the world. Yeah.
I would love to know how, I suppose, the men in your lives are celebrating, International Women's Day, for anyone and everyone to share, if you know of things.
Yeah, I'll go first. My dad told he called me up. We are two daughters, so he always calls us Singakutti, which means lion cubs, gender neutral, right? So I asked him, why didn't you wish us today? He said, no, you are lion cubs, so I don't have to wish you for Women's Day. No, we're lion cubs, but we're female lion cubs. You have to appreciate that. But he didn't get it. He couldn't understand what I was trying to say. But then, yeah, he ended up, okay, I'll wish you if that's what makes you happy. And then, yeah, went ahead and wished me. But yeah, I found that very interesting how he sees me as a gender neutral lion cub and not a woman, and I told him all about it. Yeah.
I'll be honest, I never thought it would be an occasion to celebrate just being a woman. I feel like I'm a woman every day, so it's not something I normally have to celebrate, but I was pleasantly surprised to be greeted by my partner today. It was a nice surprise, but we're not doing anything.
But what do you want to do though, Olivia? What do you want to do? Just one day.
A spa day, get a nice facial, a massage. Yeah, that'd be nice. I'll be sure to send a list.
Helen got a whole day off. The government
Yeah, that's
off.
amazing.
That's
The
true.
world needs to get on that.
I agree.
You have to find your own way off. Yeah.
Because I feel like in our society, it's so hyper masculine. Like even like women coming into power is amazing, like of course, but it's also like we're still really like prizing and rewarding the super masculine traits. So even men who maybe single dads who need to pick up their kids early, or it's like there's still that, like there's a stigma around it, like, oh, you're leaving work, I don't know, I feel like there's still work we need to do with that in general, like as opposed to just like equality, but like equity, right? So understanding that there's diverse experiences, and then like you know, not making it so like with the Lion Cup thing, like that is really interesting, but it's also like, yeah, but you're kind of like it, in a way, kind of erasing a bit, not like intentionally, but erasing the fact that I have different struggles, or I have a completely different experience that needs to be acknowledged. So yeah, but really fascinating. And how language does that too, like, you know, Romance languages being like masculine and feminine, and then like my native tongue being Tagalog, we actually don't have that. And so my mom, I remember growing up, because she remarried an American man, and my sister, so she's American but half Filipino. But anyway, so my mom's first language is not English, right? And so sometimes she would mix up like he or she, and when she's telling stories. And I remember my stepdad and my little sister like always making fun of her, or being like, see, he, and it's like, that, listen, like that doesn't exist in you know, it's just one pronoun in our language, so it doesn't really matter. And for me, that kind of just this whole like this like polarization and dichotomy, and then attaching like, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that one, but yeah, just the importance of our language defining how we view the world.
All of this adds on to our unconscious bias, like you said, right? All of these, the gender rich language stereotypes, and the social media that we see, or the movies that represents men and women, all of this is what feeding in our unconscious bias. A little step towards addressing all of those will get us one step closer. Yes, definitely. If you think
Yeah.
harder, we can take more. I'm telling you, we can take more.
Yeah, I just had to share a really, I mean, it's a subtle, I was offended, but then a little story time of what happened recently. So my husband and I went to get some coffee, and it's strange how, you know, they naturally reach out to the men to pay, although I brought him out and I was paying for it. But then, yeah, I guess I did pay for it, and it's just a little strange that you know, it's just everyone just assumes that they're gonna pay for it or something. I'm not saying no, nothing wrong to anyone paying for your wife's coffee, or you know, for anyone's coffee, but then I would like to keep that, you know, just okay, just keep it neutral. Don't just assume that, you know, he'd pay for it or something. But yeah, that happened last week, so yeah, I remember that.
It's funny you should bring that up, because I don't know if my partner is on the participant list, but every time that happens, I call it out.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
make sure I call it out. It's like,
Yeah.
please don't give the bill to the men. Just put it in the center. Just
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
assume that the man will pay. I always call it out, and he's very embarrassed about it. It's like, let it
Yeah.
go, let it go.
What's funny was my husband said, "Oh no, she's paying for it. I'm just here for the coffee." So I was like, "Okay, yeah, this was a good yeah, it's a good lesson." So yeah, that happened.
Yeah, I wanted to say, like, because of story time, when
Mhm.
when I was a child and we went, like, you can go by car from Germany to Italy. So we went on holidays to Italy, that's obvious. And in Italy, they're a lot more conservative than in all of Germany, and especially Berlin. So they always give the check to the man, my dad. And my mom is the one that always pays, because my mom has a way better job than my dad. So whenever we go to a restaurant, my mom pays, not my dad. Like, he never pays. So he ended up with my mom's purse to pay the bill, because it always came to him. My parents were like, yeah, what the fuck? These are way too, like, it's too many battles. Like, every day is a battle, we cannot go for it. But it was ridiculous, like, to see my dad. Like, I was a child, and my mom has like a big leather purse in red, like way too many payback cards and whatever. And my dad picked it up and paying out of that thing. Like, I mean, I hope they were thinking about it. It was so obviously my mom's purse.
I love that. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, the things that we do, right? Yeah.